It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Hi there, I'm Luke Hector and this is the Broken Meeple, a show where I devote my time to raving and ranting about board games, but usually more the ranting part. We'll get on with this top 10 list in just a moment, but first I want to say a quick word on behalf of my sponsor. As gamers, we find it hard to deal with empty shelves, some worse than others. You therefore want a supplier that has what you need at affordable prices and delivers on time. For me, that supplier is KIENDA. They offer a discount on bulk purchases as well as a point scheme for future acquisitions down the line. If there's a hot title you're after, chances are KIENDA's got it. Wingspan? Mine. Arc Nova? Mine. Eclipse? Actually I hate that game, it's terrible, but you might like it. If you use the referral link in the description below and sign up for a new account, you'll get 5% discount on your first order over £60. So let's make gaps in your collection a thing of the past. Get down to KIENDA and start saving today. Thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the video.
Get on with it.
So I got some ideas for top 10 lists this year, and obviously I'm going to be doing my top 50, I decided, not doing a top 100, it'll be a top 50, and that's all in the works, but I'm a little overdue for this one. I tend to try and do these in the summer, but I got a bit sidetracked, and this is my retrospective list for the previous year. Because the idea is that I do a top 10 list pretty much straight after the year is finished. I mean, and some people will do it before the year is finished, but I've done my top 10 of 2024, and obviously, as of now, those are my 10 favorite games of that year, but this time last year I did the top 10 of 2023. Now a year has passed since then, so some of these games have been played more often, some of these games have been played less than before. You know, some new games have been played that came out in 23 that I couldn't play before I did the list. So these top 10s do tend to fluctuate a little bit, not always drastically, although there have been one or two occasions. And so what I like to do is about a year later, kind of revisit that original top 10, redo it, and see where the movers and shakers have come. And it kind of gives an impression of, like, you know, games that stand the test of time, or it gives some, you know, some shout outs to some unsung heroes who didn't get the limelight back then. So not much else to explain. Without further ado, let's crack on. My number 10, I believe, was 6 last time, so this one has not quite fallen off the list, it just hasn't had as many plays as it used to, but this is still a very cool train game. What? Yeah, no, what? Train game? Well, it's not exactly a train game. It's just train themed, but honestly, you could theme this around anything that involves carrying something and delivering it somewhere, and it would work just fine. This is a small little card game from Dranda Games called Isle of Trains, and the idea with this is that your deck is, it's one of those games a bit like San Juan, where the deck of cards is everything. It's the currency, it's what you're building, it's what you're delivering, it's everything, and so you've got to micromanage these cards. So multi-use cards, already love that aspect. Theme-wise, couldn't really care less. Okay, yes, it's trains delivering cargo to places, whatever, I know the theme bores me to death, but mechanically and just time length wise, you know, this is not a complex game, takes about 45 minutes to play, and involves you building up your train carriage with these different trains, some with special abilities or just different types of cargo, fulfilling these little contracts, or delivering passengers. You've kind of got a choice of the two. But the idea is that you can actually, you know, interact with the other players by going, you know what, I wouldn't say no to that bonus that your car gives me there. You know what, you can have this green passenger. Well, you know what, go on, take this bit of timber, or I forget what you deliver, oil or something. Yeah, take this can of oil, and, you know, for that I get a couple of points and some extra bonus, like draw more cards. And so this isn't a multiplayer solitaire game. You actually do interact with players, and you don't want to obviously give too much to one player. You got to sort of spread the love a little bit. But it's very quick, very simple, very straightforward, and yet gives a decent amount of depth for what is essentially a 45-minute game. You know, not quite filler length, but still short enough that you're like, well, I need to kill some time until 6 o'clock. What have we got? Isle of Trains? Yeah, cool. And it's portable, comes in a little box, and it's produced pretty well. You know, it's just a nifty little game, and it took me a while to get to this one, you know, because the whole joke with me and the owner of Dranda Games is that, yeah, I am not a train game fan, so maybe don't put a train game near me, but it's not always the case. I mean, you know, there are other train games that have done okay, but yeah, you know, suffice to say that yeah, this one just kind of won me over, not because of its theme, but just because of some cool mechanics.
This man is overgasped!
Number 9 has dropped from 5, so just like the last one fell 4 places, so has this one. This one just simply hasn't got to the table much, and it's not because I don't enjoy it as much as last time. I still enjoy this game quite a bit, but it's not the most practical game to get to the table. It just crosses that borderline between maybe just being a little bit too long for what it is, so I tend to play it, solo now and again, but it's cool to bring Redwood out for a little bit of zany fun. This is a cool theme that's, it's being done in some other card games, but to actually take it and put it on a map with like little dexterity elements, using the templates to decide where you're going to point your camera and that is pretty cool. The idea being that you are photographers taking pictures of wildlife and scenery, your miniatures are on this sort of circular map, but in order to move somewhere, you have to use a template that you kind of have to sort of guess what length it's going to be and what curve it's going to have. Move your character and then use another template for wide lens, fisheye lens, narrow lens, wide angle, that kind of thing, and take pictures in the best view possible to collect tokens and get points. But you got to watch other players because they might photobomb your shot. You're trying to do little mini objectives.
Get out of the way.
Oh, I'm sorry, am I annoying
Yes, you are.
Well, yes,
you
what do
can't
to
possibly
me?
need to be that close.
It's nothing like, crazy in terms of its, what it is you're doing to get points, but I love this theme. It's so pretty. It's such a cool idea to have yourself like move around, and it generates quite a lot of laughs because it's not to be taken seriously. This is clearly meant to be kind of like, not a silly gimmick, but it's a gimmick that works, I suppose you could say. But it's just a neat game that is just light-hearted and fluffy, but maybe just crosses that line of being a little bit too long, and I think that's where it's faltered a little bit as the year's gone on, where sometimes I want a game that's not going to take more than an hour, and Redwood sort of takes a little bit longer than that at times. By the time you've got it out, explained it, done the whole game, especially with 4 players, I do recommend maybe playing this with 3, but, it's still good fun. It's just dropped a little bit.
It's not your fault.
Dropping a single place to my number 8, literally only from 7, is the weakest in the Tigris trilogy. And I say weakest, not in a bad way, because this entire trilogy of Garfield games has been really solid. It's just this one is the 8 out of 10 of the bunch, whereas the others easily hit 9 out of 10 plus, if not 10 out of 10. This is Scholars of the South Tigris. This is the one where you're trying to translate a language from step A to step B to step C, effectively.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Crazy gibberish.
But you're interacting with other players with the translators themselves, and you're using the dice mechanic with colors, mixing them together to create different dice, not different dice literally, but you go, right, I need to do this action, I need a green and a blue. Well, if I combine the two, that makes whatever color. So I'm brain farting a bit there, but you get the idea. You're using the different color dice to do the various actions. It's dry as a bone, as always, with the Garfield games lot. Theme is not their strong suit, but it's a decent game. I enjoy the thinkiness of it. The interaction with players where you're utilizing a shared resource is always a good thing. It means it's not entirely like multiplayer solitaire, and there's a good amount of variation in the game. There's some elements of different strategies you can pull off. It's a great game all round, but it's definitely the weakest in the trilogy. I mean, it's not exactly shifted much on this list. 1 place, whoopee-doo. But yeah, with Wayfarers, it was never going to measure up to the quality of that one, and recently, if you check out my review for Inventors of the South Tigris, that one easily beats this one as well. Not quite to the same level as Wayfarers. It would say it'd be my second favourite, but Scholars just ends up being, the weakest of the trilogy. But compared to something like Architects and Viscounts, which are 2 really great games, and Paladins, which I found meh or kind of average, this one is more Wayfarers, Inventors, and Scholars. Scholars is still pretty good. I still really like it. It's still one of my favorites of the year. It'll just probably see the table a little bit less often than the other 2, but still really solid. I'm just glad to see that the Tigris trilogy turned out to be a 3 for 3.
Hooray!
Okay, it is time to break the friggin' internet. Yes, this one I never thought would ever see a top 10 list ever, at least not in a positive note. I have previously hated on the original incarnation of this game, and I still don't like the original incarnation of this game. The second edition improved matters to the point where I'll actually play it and get some enjoyment out of it, but I haven't played the one after it. I've played the previous one with an expansion. I wonder if you can guess it by now, but the latest one is what clicked. It just did everything right. It did everything that I needed the original to do and that it wasn't doing. I saw my friends play it at a convention and I said to them, look, I am willing to play this game, I'll try anything once, come on, let's try it and see if it wins me over. I tried it at a GridCon and loved it. This is, I'm shocked to say, hold on to your keyboards, Great Western Trail, New Zealand. Yes, a Great Western Trail game is on my top 10 of the year, and I don't think I'm going to live this one down. This one just worked. You know, and it's not to say it's perfect. There are problems with it. You know, I mean, everything has got problems. And this one is mainly the fact that it's quite a front-loaded teach, particularly if you've never played a Great Western Trail game before, but frankly, do not jump into this one as your first go. But also because it is one of the biggest table hogs in gaming history. This thing has a ton of table space for its requirement, with the cards and the tokens and the money and the board and the sub board and your player boards. Oh my god, you need a big table. But this one mechanically just fixed a lot of the problems I had with the original. It feels looser than the original incarnation. There are more paths to victory. It's not just those three people. It's not just the train, the conductor, the builder, and the cow rustlers, or whatever they're called. You know, I forget. What do you call it when it ranchers? Yeah, whatever. But it's not just those three careers, of which two of them pretty much link into the same thing. Therefore, you kind of have to go with at least one of them. I just felt a bit pigeonholed in the original game. I've not tried Argentina. I would like to try it, but from what I've heard about it, it's going to be the weak link of the three. But I'll try anything once, so I'd like to give it a shot. But New Zealand, 4 different characters, each that can be approached uniquely. So I could happily diversify into different characters, or I can go for one of those 4 characters, munchkin it to high heaven, and still win the game. And I have done so. I have done it with the shepherds, I've done it with the builders, the sailors, and the shearers. All 4 of them, you could do nothing but one of those 4, and still come out on top. But then you've still got grabbing all the hazards. You've got the bonus tiles, which have loads of cool effects that you can try and aim for. You know, selling the sheep at the end doesn't feel quite as painful to do as it did in the original. You know, you actually get some of the money back. It's your choice as to whether you spend some of it on certain targets. But you can also decide, well, you know what, I'm not going to spend all my time selling the sheep at Washington or whatever it is at the end, Wellington, sorry. You know, instead I'm going to decide I'm just going to make my money by shearing wool. And so I use that strategy and you can get points that way. But then you can go sail around in your ship, you know, and just think, you know what, I don't need to sell that many sheep, but I'm going to all these different ports and laying my houses down. That's getting me bonuses. There's a lot of different paths to take. And as a result, this feels like more of a, not quite sandbox, but definitely a more open version of Great Western Trail, a more looser version, and yet still thinky, still, you know, high on the variation with the buildings that can come out in different, you know, parts of the board, which radically change how the game progresses. And I do mean it. I mean, remember my Shackleton base review where I said those corps don't really change the flow of the game? They really don't to that extent. But trust me, you do something as simple as putting the building where you buy characters at the very end of the track, or the one where you buy all the sheep at the very start of the track. Just do that little small thing and watch how the game suddenly changes dramatically from what it normally is. And in fact, we had a similar setup last game we played at HandyCon. But yeah, this one just seems to work, and it's even got a good solo mode to boot. Not that complicated, bit long, but still gives me the good feeling of the game. I never thought I'd say it, but yeah, Great Western Trail, yes, it took you a second edition and 2 separate iterations to get it right, but at least you got it right. You produced one that I like, and, you know, sheep are, I don't know, sheep greater than cows? I don't know, I like all animals, so maybe I'll just class them equal. But I'll still play the original Great Western Trail with the expansion. I want to try Argentina. I'll never touch first edition ever again. I still think the first edition was just, I don't know, felt too tight, too painful. The exploit of going to Kansas and take it, like, it was mandatory to go to Kansas and take the worst possible bit to get acceleration in the game. It just felt like it was like a, you know, a null thing at that point. I don't know, I digress. I've gone on too long just to try to justify the fact that this is on my list. But yeah, I do really like this game. It's in the collection on my shelf, and what can I say? My number 6 was my number 4. This one's just dropped a little bit. I mean, it still gets the play, so I still really enjoy this one. Do not put this game on its side when you store it on the shelf. Trust me with that. You're going to have a bit of a heart attack when you open the box again. But the box is a great insert for this game. I gave it a 10 out of 10 when I reviewed it. I mean, that's not to say it's my favorite game ever, but in terms of it just getting everything right, it did. You know, maybe if I was to go by personal enjoyment, it'd be closer to a 9, but you know, it ticked a lot of boxes, and I never thought I'd say that about anything that was called something as bland as Art Society. Art Society is a really good, 1 hour game of kind of semi-polyominoes. It's not quite the Tetris malarkey that you've seen a million times. It's squares and rectangles. But the cool thing with this one is the bidding system for how you get the tiles or the paintings in the first place and what you're scoring for. Because whenever you have a turn, the players can select the active player can select whichever shape tiles they want and whatever size, and they put a bunch of them out depending on the number of players. And then players have these little cards that they use to bid on the various items, like 1 to 20, and it's like simultaneous reveal, okay, go. But you are concerned about at least 4 different things with these tiles. Will it fit on my board? Will it fit on anybody else's board? What color frame does it have? What color type is it? Is that going to clash with anything else I've got? And those 4 things by themselves is already like really, really good. And you do this in order to get like little decor tokens to fill up spaces and to eventually fill out your board. But the cool thing with the scoring is that the one that is left over, and this is the 4th thing you've got to bear in mind, is that the one that's left over increases a track that tells you how many points that particular color type is likely to score. So you have all these different things to consider and can influence the endgame scoring based on what you take. It's just got some really cool, neat mechanics in it, and yet it is a breeze to set up and a breeze to play. Not difficult to teach the rules. I've probably made a bit of a hash of it myself. Well, I've been at work all day, give me a break. But this one just is a really solid game, and I do recommend you give this one a try, especially if you passed it by thinking, oh well, this title doesn't seem like much, even though people are always picking at the cover because it's got different layers to it. But honestly, this one really surprised me. Probably one of the biggest surprises of the previous year, 2023. Well, 2 years ago, whatever. I forget we're still in 2025 now, but yeah, this one just really, really took me by surprise and showed me it was a good game. So by all means, check it out for yourself. Check out my review for more details.
Oh, Jesus! Oh, God! Oh, Jesus, God!
Okay, from number 5, we have another new game on the list. This one I did not get to play until probably at least midway through 2024. It took a while, and yet it is 2023 on the box. I think it mainly got some distribution in the US. I certainly didn't see it in the UK that much, but I've now got the game. I've even bought an expansion for it, at Essen last year. The expansion I can kind of take or leave. More stuff, more variety is good, but I was kind of surprised by how this quirky little 1 hour engine builder game, really did win me over. And I wonder if I can see it on the shelf from where I am. I feel like I should be able to, but assuming that I can't, nope, doesn't look like it. Nope. Well, what a shame. Maybe I took it in the box somewhere. That is the Veil of Eternity. Veil of Eternity is kind of compared to a lot of games like Res Arcana and similar, very short engine builders with not much of a theme. It's mostly just a case of how to get points as quick as other people. But Res Arcana, I just found kind of meh. Seasons was already a lot better than playing Res Arcana with the whole draft the cards at the start and work with that mechanic. But then in terms of just taking an engine builder point game that takes about an hour to play, Veil of Eternity still beats that one out. It's, again, simple rules. You've got a bunch of cards, these different creatures that you can summon with different abilities, different types, different costs, but your currency is effectively 4 power stones of varying values, but you're only allowed up to 4 stones. So you could have 4 1s, but you could have 4 6s, but you don't get change when you spend them on creatures, so you gotta micromanage that to some extent. But especially once you've shoved the expansion in, you have got a lot of variety of those different creatures and can create all sorts of different cool combos and paths to victory to make each game feel quite fun. And there's always the turn angst of, right, I want to draft this particular card, but I'm going first. That means I get first pick and last pick. So I definitely want that, but is that other one going to come back round? Maybe I should grab that one. You know, and every time you're waiting for someone to decide what they want to draft from the center, it's like, don't take that card, don't take that card. You know, that classic thing we've seen in other drafting games. You know, you don't literally draft, it's an open draft, but, you know, that thing is still there. But the simplicity of this one, you know, it takes barely any time to teach at all. The only thing I hate about it is the fact that it uses stupid terminology for some of the actions that you do. I mean, you've got summon, and then you've got like a, you know, lure or hurt. I don't know. Instead of just take a card, they call it something else, like taming a creature. And then, you know, in terms of how many cards you're allowed to play, they call it areas.
What the hell are you talking about?
Whoever wrote the rulebook probably dropped the ball a little on that one, but it's simple rules, whatever. Throw in the Artifacts expansion if you want a little bit more thinkiness. Just be very wary about playing this with 4 players. I do think this game is best suited to 2 and 3. But it's a really good, solid game. I thought, you know, it was getting hyped up a little bit too much, but then I played it a few times and thought, yeah, this is quick, simple, but still with a decent amount of depth and a good amount of variation. That's all I need. Okay, we've seen a couple of new entries. We've seen most of the games fall on this list. This one has risen. Yep, this one has risen quite considerably. I liked it already. It was already at number 8 last time. But now, I'm really loving this game. This one has shot up in my expectations. It has definitely seen a lot of play since then. My friends who I introduced to it loved it so much they ordered me to get them a copy, you know, when I went to a convention, and then ordered me to get them the expansion when I last went to Essen. And with the expansion, more variety, more cool stuff, more, you know, player powers. I'm really surprised by how good Evenfall has done for me. This is probably, saying that, going from games like Res Arcana and A Veil of Eternity that I mentioned before, kind of like the next step up. This is another one of those multi-use card style games of building an engine with all sorts of different paths to victory available. But this one's got some really quirky elements to it. You've got like 2 rows that you manage with the cards. One generates you resources, but the other one is what's going to generate you points. You've got characters that can give you special abilities as you play them out, but some of them give you endgame scoring, and there are 2 different ways that they can be played. But then you've also got these rituals that you can play on cards, and depending where you play them and what tokens you put on them, and, you know, all things like that, again, different actions that you can do, different paths to victory. And then you've got these little witch meeples that you put out on the center of the board to generate bonuses and do a kind of little combat at the end of the round. I say combat, it's more just a case of who generated the most power in a particular area. It's, you know, the theme is kind of neither here or there, but it does lend itself to some really nice artwork and a cool stylistic look to the cards in general. But it's just such a good amount of variety. There's a lot of different cards, and, you know, you might play this advisor as, you know, this particular ability, but then if you play this advisor underneath your board as an end game thing, it's a different thing entirely. So all the cards have got multiple uses, but all the cards are cool to use anyway, and I've tried a lot of different strategies. Add player powers, you know, you can have the basic set of the player powers, or you can have the asymmetric ones. Each of these, pretty sweet. I mean, granted, they did have to balance one of them, but they fixed it in the expansion, so fair play, you at least addressed it. I wish you didn't have to address it with a sticker, but fine. But even the expansion, was it the Crystal Path? Throw that in. Again, more variety, more freedom with the cards, more stuff to aim for, and of course, just more cards in general. What more do you need? But I've really enjoyed this one. A solid solo mode to boot. Works well with 2, 3, or 4. Granted, it's a bit long with 4, but it still works at those player counts. The only slight downside is that apart from the whole middle of the board combat round thing, which again is not much of a conflict, I wouldn't say that this one has a ton of interaction. I mean, some of the cards let you copy other players' stuff or send a meeple over there and vice versa, but they're few and far between. You kind of are playing a semi-solitaire game, but as engine builder card games go, it's a really solid one, and it has gone up.
We have found the witch, may we burn her!
For my number 3, we are going into intellectual properties now. I have talked a lot on the podcast about how intellectual properties just kind of sell games based on the IP, how a lot of games don't play faithful to their IPs, and how some games, when they really take their IP seriously, actually turn out a really solid product. Well, this is the best example of that from 2023. This is still in my collection. It takes up an entire Cajun drum bag in order to actually carry this with the expansions. This was one of the last few Kickstarters that I actually went all in and spent the money on it because I really wanted this game. Now, that's not to say that biased my opinion or anything, because trust me, if I hated the game, I would have sold it within seconds. But the publisher of the video game worked with the game developers to make this, and it shows. Deep Rock Galactic is a brilliant poster child example of how to treat your IP right and to put out a solid skirmish game. This is a co-op game where you are working for the whole premise of the setting is that you are dwarfs in space working for a mining company. You go into asteroids in space, you mine out precious minerals and gems and, find specimens, eggs and stuff like that. But the idea is that the place is inhabited by a motley crew of spiders and bugs and various critters, none of which, well, apart from one, that flying dragonfly thing, I'll say the screecher thing, that freaks me out. But all the other ones, despite being arachnophobic, don't really freak me out. They look alien enough that you don't really recognize them. But it's just a really good co-op game. I can literally just waltz onto the PC, load it up in seconds, and play a quick quarter of an hour, 20-minute game with some randoms online, and the community is friendly. Like, people actually work together. If you're heading towards the drop pod at the end and somebody falls down, you will run out and go get them, even though you could just stay in there safe.
Thank you, brother. You're a true friend.
The camaraderie online is fantastic with this game, but the board game, faithful representation through and through. It looks the part. The miniatures are as they are in the game. One or two are slightly weird exceptions, but that's because you don't see much of them in the game. But the way the four dwarfs act, the driller, the gunner, the engineer, and the scout, the different missions you can do. The expansions now use the different biomes and like the slightly more harder missions, like the connecting the fueling the pipe fuels or whatever they are. The ones where you got to connect pipes up to a central station in order to pump liquid morkite from the planet. Another one where you've got to escort this tank drill thing across the area, and even just the other normal scenarios. Collect these gems, find these mini mules, find these eggs. Deal with swarms. It's a very easy game to teach. Has a few FAQ moments now and again. I mean, the game is not perfect by any means, and it's gonna take a while to play and set up and sort of get going. It's a little bit of an event game, shall we say. But man, whether I played a solo or 2, 3, or 4 player, because you can just control multiple characters or just use less characters, it doesn't really matter. This one it takes me into that world. It really does. It just works for me by taking the IP that I already like and putting it into board game form. And it's been so long since I've liked a skirmish co-op game, because you got all the zombicides in the world. I mean, I literally went on KIENDA today to see if there was anything else I wanted to buy, and the first half of the page is littered with zombicide variants. There's like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one. There's like a white white saga thing, I can't remember what it's called. There's another bunch of them with random IPs thrown on. It's just like, I am bored to death with zombicide, alright? I never was a fan of it in the first place, and now it's just jumping the shark. But this one is a skirmish game of miniatures versus miniatures and chucking dice and shooting guns and stuff. That works. It works even if you know nothing about Deep Rock Galactic. You can jump into this and just have a good, fun skirmish game. Granted, you'll enjoy it more if you know the IP or enjoy the IP, but and certainly that works to some extent for me. But even if you know nothing at all, which, to be fair, the 3 players I played with at AndyCon, 2 of them I don't think even knew the IP at all. They just literally saw me putting a game out for Deep Rock Galactic and decided to join, and they had a good time. So it is a game that works, and this is because the care was taken to make the IP work. Yeah, there are some little blemishes here and there they could have ironed out, but as is the case with a lot of Kickstarters and new publishers. But seriously, the fact that they did this one so well, the fact that they're doing Valheim next, another survival game that I have played online a lot with friends over the years, they did such a good job with Deep Rock. I hope so much that they do a good job with Valheim. I am definitely anticipating that one. So, you've done a good job once. Don't mess this one up, okay? Don't suddenly become like the others. Carry on doing what you're doing right, and you'll go places. Certainly with me, anyway. So those of you paying attention from last year would notice that Deep Rock Galactic was my 2 before, so it dropped to 3. So what happened to my number 2 now? Well, the 2 effectively swapped places, and to be honest, I might have even said this last year where I said that these 2 could have easily swapped places. And based on the number of plays, the ease of getting this one to the table, and how good it's been still, even before the expansion is fully made. I mean, I've tried the prototype, but honestly, even if even if the expansion didn't exist, I would still love this game. And I know it's not for everybody, but Earth is still just in my collection and getting played, whether it's solo or 2, 3 or 4 player, never with 5. I think it can do 5, yeah, to hell with that. But this is just a really good engine builder card game, and I know it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Some people have played it and gone, well, it doesn't really feel like much, you know, and that's fine. I've said that about plenty of other games, you know, there are some games that work for people and some that don't. This one does. I love multi-use cards and games where you have a bunch of cards that are all unique, they do different things, but you can't get attached to them. And so it has you micromanaging the cards effectively as a resource, and you know, the cards can become multiple things. I mean, they can become the compost deck, they can become cards that you play, they can be ones that you discard, you know. It's definitely got that almost a feel to Wingspan. It's definitely compared to Wingspan, but it's different enough from Wingspan. And I love both games. You know, both of those games are like really high in my, you know, in my collection, but Earth just gets played a lot because a lot of people have played it, and even if you've never played it before, it's not that difficult to get into. Yeah, you probably won't do very well for your first game, and you're going to get your butt kicked by me and anybody else who knows what they're doing. But the rules themselves are not complicated. If you're used to playing card games with different abilities, it really isn't that hard, and the actions are pretty straightforward, and the graphic design is pretty decent across the board. It's just the speed at which this can go when you play it with people who have played it before. We can have 3 or 4 of us, and it's like, right, this action, right, everybody do what they do. Okay, next person. Red, right, okay, right, I'm going to get some compost, going to do this, trigger this ability, right, let's go across, I won't trigger that one, but we'll trigger this one, it gets me some cards, now I'm going to use those on my compost, and then, right, I fancy doing, I'm going to do blue this time, right, give me some of those sprout cues, put them there, trigger that ability, trigger this.
Damn, I'm possessed. Wonder if I can play the accordion too.
You are just constantly on the go with this game. Downtime is kept to a minimum. Now, players can drag it out if they take forever to do their tableau or decide what they're going to do, but that's not often. You know, a lot of games can fall victim to that, but this one, because the turns are simultaneous, you know, where one person will choose the action, but then everybody resolves the action, you are most of the time engaged with the game, and a lot of games just aren't able to do this anymore. But this one was a great example of doing it, and even if it's a game where one action isn't that good for me. You know, I haven't got that many red abilities. Okay, you're choosing red, right? I'll get some of these, I'll do that one, and that's kind of me done while you do the rest of your turn. But I've still done something. I haven't just sat there doing nothing. And then that's going to make up for itself as soon as it gets to my turn. I go, right, we're doing yellow, guys, give me all the trees. It's just a really good, solid engine builder with a lot of different paths to victory, a lot of different angsty decisions of, I really want to play that card, but then I need to play this card. I need that for the objective. Do I go for it? Are you going to beat me to the objective? But I want to play them both, but I can't. I need to get the soil. I can only play one of these first. Which one do I do? Oh, I need to compost some cards in my hand. Well, you know, I mean, do I keep this one? Do I do it? You know, there's a lot of good decisions like that and a little bit of cool angst to go with it. It's just great. It's, you know, it has its clunky moments every now and again, but you know, I think it's partially because so many people have played it, and once you've played it, you get how it works, and it doesn't take forever to play the game, like an hour from start to finish. And you know, it's nice to actually get games that can finish in an hour and still give you a decent amount of depth during that time. Granted, takes a little bit to score the game, but at least the score pad is laid out in layers. It's not like Forest Shuffle, you know, where I need to use an app to actually score the wretched thing, and if you have sleeves, it's going to be problematic in doing so. But yeah, this one just solid game, and I know not for everybody. Some people really bounced off Earth. That's fine, but I certainly didn't.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
So my number 1 game on the Retrospective 23 list didn't change from last year. Nope. I mean, I actually feel sad that I didn't get to play this at HandyCon. I even put up a game saying, I want to play this at HandyCon. And only 2 people signed up, and then 1 person pulled out, and I couldn't really get people on short notice. It was a shame, but HandyCon is not really the best place to play this game, whereas if I take this to other ones like GridCon or ManaCon or BayCon or anything like that, oh, this gets played. And even at other HandyCons, I have managed to get it played now and again. It's just that I've finally broken the chain after, what, like 10 plus conventions. I love this game. It is wonderfully thematic. It is thinky as hell. It is interactive as hell. It is mean as all get out at times. It's a 4-hour bonanza, and I know I'm usually the person who doesn't like games that go too long for what they are, but Hegemony is not too long for what it is. Yes, it's long. It's an event game. It's going to take you the whole evening. It's going to be a 4-hour experience for the most part. But you are engaged always. You are constantly looking at what the other players are doing. You are seeing the board shape, develop over time. Like, what companies come out? What are the policies now? What is the state trying to do to help all the different players? Is the working class starting to get a little bit aggressive now? Is the, are the goods available from the capitalist and the middle class to buy? Me as the state, I'm watching all 3 other players thinking, well, you're getting a little bit up yourself. You're struggling a little bit. I'll try to help you, but I can't help you too much. But I need to keep him at bay. I love playing the state for that reason. But all 4 classes are enjoyable to play. Some are harder to play than others, for sure. But the social political theming of this game works so well. The classes behave like you would expect them to behave. The interaction with the players, some people are collaborating, some people are going at each other's throats. It is never a dull experience. Now, the caveat though is that I need to play this with people who know what they're doing. See my top 10 games I don't want to play with noobs list. This is certainly one where every time I take it to a convention, I say experienced players only, and that means you need to have played it a few times so that I don't have to teach you the fundamental basics of the game. At most, I just need to reiterate how a particular class works. That's fine, but yeah, it's not a game I want to teach to a brand new player unless I really like the person I'm doing it with, because it's a bit of a chore to do that. But you get 4 people. Or even 3. It works great at 3, and it's even got an interesting little solo mode in it as well. But 3 or 4 people who know the game well, it is one of the most fun convention games I can take, and it never fails me. It's never been, a terrible experience. 1 or 2 occasions have been slightly scuppered by a brand new player doing something really stupid, despite you telling them it's really stupid, which kind of king makes someone else.
Throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity.
Not to say the game is flawless, and certainly not to say the game can't get moments like that, but this is one of those reasons I don't want to play it with noobs. So, when you play it with experienced players, you don't get that problem. It's just such a surprise. I mean, it took me a long time to get this one reviewed. I had to give this one the beans a lot, and it's not a short game. I probably have never put so much time and effort into a review as I did with Hegemony. But God, was it worth it. This is a great game. It is going to be in my collection for life. I've bought an E-Raptor, art insert for it. I've got, I take clay chips with me, the brass clay chips. Every time I play it, it's just such a good experience. And I can remember stories of how certain games went even years ago. And I love hearing about other people's stories. And every time I see it at a convention, I walk by and go, oh, all right, I just want to have a look. And and I look at the board state, seeing what the policies are, what the classes are doing, and it's telling its own story. I only wish I was that excited about World Order. I've only demoed it, but suffice to say the demo didn't win me over. But, I'll try World Order properly when it comes out and hopefully do a full review. But, yeah, don't play World Order thinking it's going to be Hegemony 2.0. They are very different games. You can certainly see there's a little bit taken from one to the other in terms of its asymmetricalness. But, yeah, World Order for me just felt like an asymmetrical Twilight struggle, which is not really the kind of game I was hoping for. But even if that one doesn't win me over, Hegemony certainly did. This is a keeper, for sure. So there you are, that is my retrospective 23 list. As you can see, the list didn't change to a great extent. The top of the list remained about the same, but the bottom half jiggled around a bit and we got 2 new entries. 2023 was not the greatest year either, and I know I sound like a bit of a broken record when I say that, but, you know, 23 was a little bit better, I thought, than 24 for me, honestly. I mean, yeah, it was difficult to sing the praises of 10 games to the point where they were all 9s out of 10s, but, you know, there was a lot of good games. Maybe not great games, but a lot of games that were like, yeah, I'd play these, or I'd still play them. They just weren't keepers in the collection, whereas 2024 had a smaller conglomerate of that. But, you know, there's still a few on my shortlist which, you know, I did look at but just couldn't meet the mark. I mean, in terms of new games that I've played since I did the original list, there was World Wonders and Faraway. Now, World Wonders, decent game from Arcane Wonders, it's fine. I like it, it's just not top 10 material. Really don't like the solo mode in it. But Faraway was another game that I'll talk about in the next podcast show in more detail, but people have told me to play Faraway all the time since I did my Castle Combo review. Well, I got to play it several times at HandyCon, and yeah, it's a good quirky card game. I'll talk a bit more about my first impressions on the podcast, but yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a good, solid game. But other ones that I just didn't consider even from last time, though, I mean, well, which ones fell off the last list? Siberian, the solo game. It's still over there in my collection. You know, the Shadi Torbay Omniverse? Or is it Omniverse? Omniverse, or whatever they call it. But basically, you know, those solo games, still really solid. Leaf, Weird City Games, still solid game. What else? Did everything else fall off? No, I think there was only a couple that actually fell off. The rest of them just kind of jiggled around in favour of a couple of new ones. But yeah, people will talk about games like the White Castle and Free Wing Circus. Free Wing Circus was really meh, and the White Castle was good, but it doesn't have a lot of variation. So it was good at first, and now it's quickly sort of become a bit boring. Apiary, meh. Evacuation, not a fan, check out my review. Nucleum, certainly a lot better than Brass, but, you know, I like it, I just don't love it. Books of Time, cool different game from Board and Dice. Spellbook, cool little engine builder game down there, just not top 10 material. Fox Experiment, too clunky and too fiddly for its own good. What else have we got on here? Oh, Stationfall, big game, epic. I do like playing it with some mates of mine, but it is a bit long, it's front loaded, and pretty much I'm only playing it with one single group. Voidfall, decent enough game if you play it solo, way too long and fraught when you play it multiplayer, especially as it mostly feels like a solitaire game, but it's just too impractical, too big, too expensive, too many rules, too much to deal with from a solo perspective for it to be like worth it for me. What else we got? Pirates of Maracaibo, fine, just nothing amazing. Series, decent, on my shelf. Kutna Horror, decent, again, not top 10 material. I think it's kind of gone down a little bit since I reviewed it. Path of Civilization, still on my shelf, still pretty decent, but again, not top 10 material. And I think that's pretty much it from a shortlist perspective. Yeah, and a couple of little trick takers and stuff like that. So there was a lot considered in terms of games, but at the end of the day, there can be only 10, and in this case, it was basically 8 of the previous 10, just in different orders, but hopefully I broke the internet with some of you with particularly the Great Western Trail pick. That is definitely going to get some feedback, I am sure. So anyway, I'm going to sign off. Next time will probably be the top 50 that I end up doing, but also I want to do a list of top Euros to play with 4 players. This is something that I constantly am a broken record of, saying that 3 players is the way to play most Euros, because 4 just ends up being too long. Well, there are some Euro games where 4 players is actually worth doing, and I hope to come up with a decent list of 10 to explain in more detail. But that's for another time. So that's it for me on this episode of the Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please leave a thumbs up, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Your views and your engagement are what keep this channel going. Subscribing to the channel will help keep you notified of more videos, but also consider a Patreon campaign where, you know, your financial support is what helps to keep the channel running from a money perspective, because there's a lot of outgoings that the channel has to deal with in terms of subscriptions and conventions and that, and because of you I'm able to keep this channel going and review a lot of the games that you want me to cover. But of course, let me know your comments down below. Do you like the 10 games that I said on this list? Are you sad that those 2, Leaf and Siberian, had to leave the list? Are there games in the short list that you think I am mad for not putting on the top 10 of the year? By all means, let me know your thoughts. It will be great to read them as always. So until next time, remember, regardless of whether 23 was a year to remember or to forget, it's still just a year of games. So take care, and bye for now.